Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And welcome to this World Café session on small island development states held here at the Benelux Pavilion. I'm Wasim Baini, and I'm your main moderator for today's proceedings, and it's truly an honor to guide you through this essential dialogue. So we gather here today to address the unique challenges faced by the small island development states that require our collective wisdom, innovative thinking, and collaborative efforts. The session will revolve around three critical topics: salinization, freshwater, and food production and security. These issues directly impact the lives of those in SIDS, and our goal is to identify sustainable solutions through open dialogue and meaningful partnerships. Our journey begins with insights from visionary leaders. So we're privileged today to have Oriana Wouters, a climate leader and policy officer from the Department of Nature and Environment in Aruba, kickstarting our discussions. Shortly after, a representative from CARDI, the Caribbean Agriculture Research Development Institute, will share also perspective on the challenges faced by the small islands. Following these enlightening keynotes, we will hear from esteemed individuals and experts from Wageningen University and Research, shedding light on water, agriculture, and the critical nexus between them. As we embark on this journey, I encourage you all to actively engage, share your insights, and participate in crafting actionable recommendations. So without further delay, let us commence this World Café session by inviting our first keynote speaker, Mrs. Oriana Wouters, climate leader and policy officer at the Department of Nature and Environment in Aruba. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to participate in this session on the World Café on Small Island Developing States Challenges. We are here to empower SIDS by identifying tailored solutions, engage in thoughtful discussions to develop a genuine sense of understanding, which should be the foundation for meaningful partnerships. Most of us know that SIDS face unique challenges with regards to climate change. But do most of us realize that oftentimes these unique challenges are a product of a complex colonial past that has defined and has been defining the global developmental vision? As humans, we have revolutionized development. It started when we moved away from the nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle to an agrarian lifestyle where we harnessed ecological, technical knowledge and passed this on to the next generations. Then came the emergence of colony development through exploitation of agrarians as slaves, which was perhaps one of the first examples of toxic capitalism. Then some time passed, and we entered the first industrial revolution, which mechanized the backbone of societal economy. We invested in steam engines and extracted coal as fuel. Then came technical advancements. The second industrial revolution in electricity, which was fueled by oil and gas, and we saw the rise of cars and telecommunications. For the third industrial revolution, we tapped into nuclear energy, developed the electronic industry, flew to the moon, and created what eventually became the internet. Yet today, we are a planet that is still in development, with our Achilles heel being acceleration. What do I mean? Well, we only managed to consider slaves as possible humans after years of revolting. And even after that, still their descendants had to argue in our legislative language and perception of development to obtain some form of human right. We only managed to consider occupational hazards to worker health and safety after they revolted and suffered premature deaths. We only managed to consider the rights of future generations after court cases emerged where humans were fatally affected by polluted air, soil, and waters, which is exacerbated by nature's capacity to take us by surprise in the form of accelerating wind speeds, storms, wave action, sea level rise, drought, wildfires, and so on. By always accelerating development, we tend to overlook what should be the norms and values for moving forward. Our developmental history highlights human ingenuity, creativity, and its drive for implementation. Yet, we've somehow always managed to have it go hand in hand with inequality, injustice, and discrimination. It is not coincidental that we are gathered here today in an open and safe environment to discuss three critical topics: salinization of soils, sustainable freshwater management, and food production and security. These challenges highlight our past need to accelerate and inconsequentially overlook the human rights-based approach that should have been the building blocks of development. As an islander from Aruba, a small state within the Dutch kingdom, I am faced on the daily with these challenges in the form of my syntropic agroforestry pilot project. It is also known as a food forest. Food forests have existed for over 4 decades, but truly they originate from an indigenous ecological knowledge derived from forests of South America. Here, humans embodied harmony with nature in a nature-based approach and a human rights-based approach. Everyone can eat, as long as conscientious maintenance is employed through a profound understanding of the dynamics of interspecies and interspecies interaction in support of development and at times in degradation of development. Modern-day food forests combine this indigenous technology with today's agricultural technologies, such as the use of automated irrigation systems powered by solar and monitored through our smartphones. For Aruba, the introduction of food forests is aimed to be the urban green revolution. Our climate is semi-arid. The first rule of this system is no bare soil. You can just remember that, no bare soil. As soon as sun exposure changes chemical reactions in the soil and poorly affects the survival of insects, microbes, and fungi, which depletes soil health and productivity. Mulching with fresh and dry leaves provides protection from the sun, nutrients, and cooling, enhancing the water retention capacity of this system, generating maximum biomass obtained through the plant's energy source, the sun. And conscientious maintenance needs to be employed regularly so that the plants have means to communicate. They do so through the air and through the soil. This way, they stimulate each other to grow rather than stress each other out, which will attract what we call pests. The last rule is that pests are an indicator of system health. These 5 rules create a balanced energy environment. Nothing is lost, only harnessed, and that is the meaning of syntropy. We have a saying in Aruba, "Sopi dimpura tasali sala," which translates to, rushing a soup will make it salty. And we gotta be honest with ourselves. None of us like eating an excessively salty meal. Yet we are here challenged as SIDS to sustainably manage freshwater resources to deter soil salinization, which in turn reduces food production and security. With this in mind, I wish to stimulate you to envision a different history that we are going to share with our great-grandchildren. One that focuses on progress through conscientious development paced through a human rights-based approach, fundamentally grounded in the union of traditional knowledge and modern-day technologies. So coming from an island, I tell you to have fun today. Enjoy those breakout sessions. Be open to taking it easy and empathically listening. sharing your experiences and perspectives. This is the means to forge connections, exchange perspectives, and knowledge that inspires resilient, fair, and a just development in small island developing states. Thank you for your attention. Have fun.
And now through video, we will be listening to Mr. Ansari Hussein, who's the director of the Caribbean Agriculture Research and Development Institute.
Caribbean food systems are vulnerable to exogenous shocks. This is a fact. Our country's unique geographical location, as well as our social, environmental, and economic challenges, makes our food systems highly vulnerable to shocks, such as pandemics, wars, and climate change. Agriculture remains an important sector for Caribbean countries. In 2022, it contributed to 20% of Haiti's GDP, 13.5% of Guyana's GDP, and 8.8% to Jamaica's GDP. However, much of the data points to the fact that the CARICOM region is operating below its potential to feed itself, making us one of the most food-dependent regions in the world. Presently, our food import bill is estimated at over $5 billion annually. To that extent, therefore, CARICOM has been implementing a plan to reduce the food import bill by 25% by the year 2025. In a similar vein, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States has also approved a food and agriculture systems transformation strategy for that sub-region. The region's reliance on rain-fed agriculture, low productivity, animal and plant pests and diseases, increased frequency and intensity of natural hazards and climate variability and extremes continue to undermine the achievement of some of these food security targets. Some CARICOM member states are also among those categorized as most water scarce globally, and worse yet, some models are projecting a 20 to 30% decrease in precipitation by the year 2100 and more frequent droughts. The Caribbean also lies in the Atlantic hurricane belt, making us highly susceptible to the devastating damage that these storms often leave behind. It takes but only one serious storm to wipe out decades of progress. Scientific evidence has also confirmed that climate change is amplifying hydromet events such as flooding, droughts, and hurricanes in the Caribbean. These are having disastrous impacts on our food systems and ability to sustainably feed ourselves, and directly jeopardizing the lives and livelihoods of people who are most dependent on these productive sectors. Over the last decade, we have been experiencing firsthand how climate extremes have been negatively impacting food production and productivity. Consequently, consumers too have been affected with the heightened increase in food prices. Between May and August 2023, the Caribbean experienced record-breaking temperatures, driven mainly by an El Nino event. As a result, water-stress conditions have affected food production, availability and accessibility, worker productivity and income. In mid-May, around mid-May 2021, Guyana experienced above normal rainfall, which led to the worst flooding that country experienced in 20 years. Approximately 52,000 households, 74,000 acres of farmlands, and over 20,000 farmers were affected. In 2017, Hurricane Maria left Dominica devastated. According to the post-disaster needs assessment at that time, the agricultural sector, which employed approximately 25% of the population, suffered $55 million in losses and $124 million in damages. And between 2014 and 2015, Jamaica experienced one of the worst seasons of drought in recent history. According to reports, annual agricultural production declined by 30% from 2013 to 2014. This, along with bushfires, resulted in a $6.5 million loss for the economy. Climate change, among other factors, are also exacerbated biodiversity loss in the Caribbean. Biodiversity conservation and protection are critical to supporting food security and economic development in the Caribbean, which is a biodiversity hotspot. The signing of the Declaration on Sustainable Agriculture, Resilient Food Systems, and Climate Action coming out of COP28 is welcomed. It is a strong endorsement of countries' commitment to integrate food and agriculture in their climate plans. This will, of course, safeguard the livelihoods of farmers, the environment, and contribute to food security. The landmark loss and damage deal is also significant, as it will help the poorest and most vulnerable countries to pay for the irreversible damage caused by climate. But regional stakeholders must really urgently rethink the way we produce and consume food. Resilience must be the bedrock upon which repositioning the sector is built on. It is clear that greater investment is needed to develop scalable, innovative solutions and climate-smart strategies. This will help the vulnerable countries in the region to bolster their resilience and adaptation to the impacts of a changing climate. And what are the key elements of the system we keep speaking about? One, you must have consistent, accurate, real-time data. This includes market data, production data, soil data, farmers data, climate and weather data. You need data to really plan properly. Without data, you're basically shooting aimlessly in the dark. You need active participation of all stakeholders. This will include linkages between different ministries. The Ministry of Agriculture must be speaking to the Ministry of Health, speaking to the Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of the Environment, and so on. It requires a multidisciplinary effort. What we eat has a direct impact on our health. The number of tourists visiting the region will inform production plans and so on. We cannot be feeding tourists on extra-regional imports. We also need to look at the CARICOM region as a whole. We have to encourage and facilitate cross-border investments. Most of our countries in the region are simply too small to really be totally self-sufficient when it comes to food. We have countries with large land masses, we have countries with low energy costs, and so on. We need to work together to develop a system in which all states in the region benefit. We need to develop a production plan with adequate monitoring and evaluation systems. In terms of fisheries, we have to address issues relating to overexploitation, pollution, and coastal erosion. We need to provide an enabling environment in terms of policies which encourage participation of producers and fisher folks, review incentives, removal of trade barriers. We need an aggressive R&D program towards developing resilient, cost-effective, profitable, versatile, climate-resilient agri-food systems using cutting-edge technology and innovation. R&D drives and underpins transformation towards building resilience, addressing challenges, for example, water, insurance, soils, knowledge transfer. If it doesn't make economic sense, then it is likely no one will adopt it. We need to have campaigns to encourage eating the right foods, to develop the right tastes, and therefore markets. Individuals need to make the right choice when it comes to eating. If there's no market, then no one will produce. There's need for an official intra-regional transportation system at a reasonable cost. This, of course, will facilitate trade and ease of movement of materials, goods, and services. There's need to develop agro-processing systems to add value, reduce waste, utilize excess produce. There's need for access to financing and capital. We need to establish a digital agriculture strategy. And when we speak about this, we are speaking of e-platforms to facilitate data collection, buying and selling, precision agriculture, drone technology, remote sensing, virtual extension to facilitate knowledge sharing, and so on. If we adopt these measures, we will truly transform food systems in this region. CARD is committed to providing the science-based solutions to lead this transformation and reposition the sector. Together we can work together to build productive, sustainable, competitive, and resilient food systems. I thank you.
Such an inspirational keynote speech by Mr. Ansari Hussain from Cardi. Stalinization is one of the topics we're addressing today, and for this reason, I would like to invite Mrs. Unit Sneslacher She's a senior researcher at the Water and Food team from Wageningen Environmental Research. She will be providing an insightful presentation on and discussion on salinization. Welcome, Jude.
Wasim, thank you very much for giving me the floor, and I'm pleased to set the scene for the topic of salinity in small island development states. So, the small island development states, as already highlighted before with our previous speakers, have been at the forefront of global discussions on strong climate mitigation ambition and face unique challenges arising from climate change. And today I would like to discuss how climate change is linked with salinity issues on these island states. Salinity is a complex problem with multiple dimensions. While salinity has been around for some time, I would say ages, recent years have shown increase in salinity due to climate change factors. So including sea level rise, higher temperatures, and land subsidence, erratic rainfall patterns, but not only these type of factors, also human developments, such as overpumping of groundwater, further increase the issue. The developments have significant impact on agriculture. Currently, almost 1.4 billion hectares of land, 10% of arable land, are salt affected globally. And with over 1 billion hectares at risk of salinization, it's important to know that salinity is a global phenomena, but also has very local impact. So let's shift our focus to the small island developing states. And because here agriculture also deals with these type of problems. For the small island development state specific, the climate change factors such as sea level rise and limited fresh water availability are main drivers of salinity. But as already highlighted before, also human developments such as overpumping of groundwater and the management of soils and water are major challenges. So let me walk you through a bit more how salinity is impacting these states. For now, I will keep it just within the water and salinity context, and let me just start with the sea. And let me indeed explain how the sea is increasing these salinity levels. Because projected changes have been made about the mean sea level in ocean basins where several of these states are located. And these are mostly about that they're just about or often above the global mean sea level rise. So it's really, indeed, it's quite logical that we think that the sea level rise is indeed impacting these states a lot. So we know that the salinity levels so we can say indeed that the salinity levels will rise because the water is just rising. So that is very logical, right? It's because the sea is saline and the water is rising. So I think we can think of that. But this is just the start. Because it's not happening only on the surface, it's also happening underground. The salt water is seeping into the aquifers under the ground. So how to deal with this, right? Normally fresh water could be used to flush out the salts. But with erratic patterns, this becomes very difficult to handle. So people turn to groundwater for their water need. But as said before, this is also more saline because of the sea level rise, because the sea is pushing into these aquifers and the salinity. So this will eventually turn into major impacts on agriculture and biodiversity. And now we just talked about the water context of the salinity, but of course also the land subsidence and other related factors are related to increase of salinity. But for now we'll just stick to the water context. And also to start thinking about these other aspects. But I think the most important point here is how we are dealing with it, because this is happening. And of course, mitigation is very important, but we also need to think about adaptation and solutions. And I would also like to invite to have the work session mostly focused on talking about the solutions and how to integrate local knowledge with indeed modern technologies, as already highlighted before. Because there are many high-tech solutions, but there's already a lot happening on the ground, so how to deal with that. So I would like to leave it for here, so just to get your mind started, and yeah, Wasim, back to you.
Thank you, Judith. From salinization, we will move to fresh water. And for this reason, I would like to invite Professor Petra Helliger's chair group of the Water Resource Management Group of Wageningen University and Research. Petra, to you.
Well, thank you, Wasim. Well, ladies and gentlemen, these were very inspiring keynotes, so thank you very much for that. I would like to talk about fresh water, and the two topics I would like to address is the importance of incorporating fresh water in economic development plans, as well as about food security, because you cannot be it's difficult to be food secure with little water. Let me start by the first one. Well, Judith explained already why fresh water is so much under pressure. It's not just sea level rise, but it's also the extreme events and the change in rainfall patterns. And I think SIDS are among the most water scarce countries all over the world. And what does water scarcity mean for the SIDS? I think it really undermines fundamental priorities such as the human right to clean water and sanitation, but also the conservation of biodiversity is jeopardized by water scarcity. I think water scarcity also seriously constrains the economic development in the SIDS, such as developing water-intensive industries and also the beverage industry. But the most serious one, I think, is agriculture, because agriculture needs a lot of water to produce food. And the question is, of course, if your water is scarce, do you only want to grow high-value crops as fruits and vegetables, which are often nutrition-rich and improve your healthy food diets, or also some low-value, stable crops? But these, of course, are eventually political decisions. But I really think it's important to always take this water component into consideration when you make economic development plans, because it's all based on trade-offs. Let me now switch to to food security. I also found an interesting report written by FAO on sustainable management of freshwater resources for food security and nutrition in the SIDS. So maybe you all know it already. And it really shows the limited suitable land and water resources and the very high dependency of imported foods to become food secure. Because when you have limited land and limited water resources, you become dependent on food imports. And we have seen during the COVID that due to broken transport lines, that's not such a desirable situation any longer. So it's good to be food self-sufficient in some high-value crops production. And I think some of the SIDS have a lot of rainfall. So it's also important to have the infrastructure to harvest this rain, to capture this rain, and to use it beneficially. So also to maybe expand your irrigated agriculture, and not just your rain-fed agriculture, which will be much more prone to changing rainfall patterns. Just storing water and irrigating the crops can really improve your food production. And I think the theme is, which I would like to discuss with you later on, and I would like to pick your brains on, is really how to produce more food if you're limited in your fresh water availability. So I would like to leave it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. I would like to invite now Fred Beekmans, Program Lead, Circularity and Climate Neutral Society at Wageningen University and Research. Fred, to you.
Thank you, Wasim, and nice that you can remember my program. I'm now going to talk a little bit about the food production and security. But to be honest, with the excellent video of the director of Cardi, he has put so many topics in 7 minutes that I cannot compete with that. But I think following up on my two colleagues, definitely there's no food without fresh water. So those are let's say the prerequisites, the starting points where we are today. Peter already mentioned a couple of things that the rainfall, but also the degradation and soil of soil and the ecosystem, a loss of biodiversity, that all has an impact on the food system. In addition to that, there's a high competition for land, because as you also said, there's a lot of tourism. So there is competition on land for definitely a number of economic activities. So Wageningen has done a workshop with many small island development states, and they came with a strategic report, and it is available. I just checked. I thought it was not available yet, but you can download it. And it has many topics that came out of that session that was done with people from the regions. And I'll just give a few topics that are in that report. And those are the questions that I have to the audience to discuss in a smaller audience, in smaller groups later on. And the first topic is the dependence on food imports. So, as mentioned by Petra, many Caribbean countries depend heavily on processed food imports. So it's mostly processed food imports. And they can be expensive. And it can also lead to food and nutrition insecurity in the event of supply chain disruptions. We've seen that with COVID, but also with what's happening with other crises. So we have to be very careful for that. So the question for the discussion, I already put it up there, is how can the potential food production of the islands be fully exploited in a nature-positive direction? So we also try to directly change, and I think that was also the message of the first keynote speaker, do it in a nature-positive way. Then the second topic is that there's limited access to nutritious and affordable food, also mentioned in the video. So in some Caribbean countries, access to nutritious and affordable food is limited, and that can result in high rates of malnutrition, obesity, and other diet-related health issues. So the question there to be discussed is what measures can be taken to increase health and healthy eating on the islands. And you see they're all interrelated. Actually, it's interrelated with the question that Peter also mentioned. So the third question is about the lack of circularity. So if we start talking about bringing a new food system or upgrading the food system, circular agriculture is an approach to farming with less input of virgin materials and maximize the use of natural resources. And in the Caribbean islands, circular agriculture can play an important role in promoting sustainable agricultural practices, reducing environmental impacts, and improving food security. So the question that links to that is what prerequisites are required for the islands to increase circular agriculture and other aspects of circularity. So as said, they are sort of interrelated, so I think we have to see how the working group is going to discuss them as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. I think now it's time to move to the breakout sessions. There's one group will be led by Petra and Judith on salinization and freshwater on this side, and one group led by Fred on food production and security from this side. So we will now divide the participants into two groups, and then the participants of each group will move to the other group, and then the moderators will provide a pitch at the end of the breakout session. And it seems that Oriana will not join us for the breakout session, but I would like to thank you very much for your keynote speech. It was very inspiring. And let's continue this effort on strengthening partnership and collaboration. Thank you. So would you join us here? Thomas, would you join us here? And maybe Jacobina on the other side. Would you join us here?
I am on the side.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just here to take a picture.
Thank you.
To do some communication on your event.
Okay. Maybe we need some thinking power from your side here.
Early, but not yet.
Okay, great.
We need to adjust the frame. I don't know. What are we gonna...
we asked young people, what is their relationship with food? When you think about eating food, what do you think about? And an average person, honestly, Martin, a young person, they think of food in a styrofoam container, wrapped in foil, a hot lunch, like ribs, barbecue.
No connection with the production process.
No. And for me, and for us growing up, I had a mango tree in my backyard. The idea
talking about how to become food secure in the small island developing states.
When you're
If you want to
working.
scale.
Okay. Oh, that's so
Please,
interesting.
Joanna.
Actually, I wanted to meet someone from Malaysia. I didn't know if it was the right time.
No, I don't think
No.
you're in the right
It's different.
pavilion
Different.
yet.
Okay.
I think it's the pavilion there, maybe.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, this is the Benelux pavilion.
If we're water scarce, this is so interesting. Like we don't even think about irrigation systems. Do we have irrigation systems?
Yes, at least on my island. But what I wanted to
Yeah?
say first is that so what Aruba is doing in this regard is the implementation of more food wars. So the government, so from a movement that started last year, the government took it on, and actually gave the opportunity to schools, so elementary schools, to use their terrain as a food forest. And they just have calls, which elementary schools can then say that they are interested. They receive training, so the board receives training, and a group of volunteer parents that are going to maintain the system. And the system doesn't need much maintenance. It needs maybe once a week for 4 hours if you have, let's say, a couple of people, 2 or 4 people, depending on the class size. Yes, because what they do is by protecting the soil and always using every waste that is produced by the system, it goes back into the soil. It's a closed system itself, but at some point we don't use less and less water. So after 6 months, so we combine fruit trees with beds of just grass, which is our winter, and then beds that use traditional vegetable cultivation. And we have a rule, it's called the Three Sisters. And the Three Sisters is corn or sorghum. Yeah, it's local sorghum. It's not the white sorghum, it's brown sorghum. Um, with cucumber and pumpkin. Oh. Or it's always a crawling, two crawling plants and then a rising plant. So you have sorghum, it can be cucumber and pumpkin or a cucumber and calabash. In our case, it was a calabash. Or it can be string bean. Instead of cucumber, string bean. And for instance, in our campus, they all have a different year that you the harvest, right? So the sorghum goes really quickly, then you have the ground itself around it, or the string bean, and so you harvest then the string bean, and then you have pumpkin that's loose. And so this is a traditional method that was employed by quite a few nations on the island. And what happens is that after 6 to 12 months of after implementation, the soil quality is so enhanced that you can actually reduce the amount of water provided to the system. So this is in the fruit beds and the rainwater beds. Well, I chose mango, sugar apple, knip. I don't have knip. I have coconut, mungberry, so the Surinamese cherry, we call it. Um, various types of citrus plants, so lemons and limes. Because the reason why we combine it that way is because we're maximizing photosynthesis, right? So we're using plants that need less sun. Those are like the ones that take up most of the bed, combined with beds with species that use a lot of sun. So then those species grow up, they provide shade for the other fruit trees. So it's a combination of species maximizing biodiversity in the plant species, but also attracting animals, so insects, reptiles, mice.
5 minutes. 5 minutes, and then we will switch. 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's like
5 minutes.
Yeah, that was clear.
Sorry.
No worries. Because agroforestry is also indeed what sometimes is mentioned as a way of dealing with salinity, making food more resilient.
And like for instance, my farm, sorry, you have to speak on.
So I'm wondering, it's so interesting, right? Because we try to come from an island perspective, assuming that all the islands have very similar climates, but it's not because the ABC Islands are on a different coast, and we are in the hurricane belt receiving incredibly more. So I'm wondering the feasibility of a food forest in our environment with the seasons of heavy rain, whether it's feasible or not. Because one of the biggest issues with our local farmers is, like I said, almost the inundation of their soil and their forest due to so much rainfall.
It's not scarcity, but flooding.
It's flooding.
Yeah, but the system was actually developed by South American indigenous people. So these were working in tropical rainforests where you have a high humidity and the water cycle there is like. So in this sense, I would recommend harvest, like what Petra said, harvesting the rainwater and moving it, deviating it a bit away. Like in Bonaire, they use like these dikes within the system that actually retain the water in an area of the system. So even if it's on a slope, it's retaining the water, like it encapsulates the water, and then they can just irrigate from that same system. But it's also
But that's
Small dam.
But that also requires the land, and in St. Martin we're so land limited because like
You want vertical farming?
no, what's the gentleman's name?
Fred.
Fred. Fred mentioned that
But I do want to talk.
competing land priorities.
There's a thing about
That's maybe
vertical
something to
farming.
mention.
Because
Vertical
it
farming
also
or
uses
competing land?
less water, right?
Solutions.
Depends on how you implement it, but
Like a hydroponic system.
I don't know. You're the expert.
The thing is,
Well, we
that
want your brain
hydroponic
on this.
systems,
I mean, I just know that we're very land limited.
we have
What about
scarcity in
irrigation
land.
techniques?
Yes,
It
I
has to
really
be
feel the
placed in
capture
areas
of
where you
rainfall.
can't grow vegetables. Like a limestone soil, you know? And then you can have vertical
Efficient
production systems.
irrigation techniques.
this is also indeed, the Netherlands has also very land scarce, and we also have a lot of land competitions there. So that is indeed also a thing to think about. I don't know indeed what are you going to use your land for? Is this for food production, and what type of food production, and what indeed do we want to produce in the land, and what do we want to get out?
What can you produce?
Yeah, also.
Like, what can you produce according to the type of minerals you have, like the type of soil you have, right?
Yeah.
And
But how do you determine that?
spatial analysis and
Yeah,
some ground
or
truthing.
long-term vision indeed, because so
It's water and soil steering.
Maybe you can say the basket of goods, like what the basket of crops, like what are the basket of crops that make most sense for, you know how they say that the cost of basket of goods?
Yeah.
I think this is the basket of crops.
Yeah.
For long-term vision, what are the crops that are, like mangoes? Like you cannot imagine how many mango trees we have on the island.
Yeah.
That during mango season, you will be driving over mangoes, and the road will have smashed mangoes.
Yeah, but
Because
that
it's too much.
it requires to find
you don't
preservation methods.
Exactly.
Preservation methods, dehydration, concentration, make fresh fruit cocktails.
No, but no one does it. No one leverages a surplus of mangoes to do this. It's so,
For
because we're
the
not
for the sake of
international.
time, I would like to now ask you to move to the other group. Sorry to interrupt you, but I would like to ask you to move to the other moderator.
Thanks for writing.
My handwriting was getting bad.
Yeah, but you have to go down.
I think you have enough inputs, Fred. Or Jana, if you have still time, I would like to invite you. It's very interesting there.
Like I don't understand.
So impacts on agriculture or biodiversity, or because normally if you talk about okay, so we talk a little bit after the session.
Yeah.
Because we're
How can the potential food
fish, not overfish. Make use of the indigenous knowledge how to fish, and prevent overfishing. Combine the tools of the knowledge of tools and knowledge of the indigenous people. That links to your food forest, I think, you mentioned. Combine that with new technologies. So the example was given that due to storms, fish go elsewhere, and it's very important that they started attracting fish from chemicals, which is very nice work. And then at some point they started working on how can we attract them better, so how can we find them. Combine new technologies with the knowledge of the indigenous people. Collect data and monitoring, which was mentioned in the video from Cardi quite extensively. We realize that most of what we said here is adaptation for climate change. And one final version remark was made that it's very difficult to get financial backing for the islands, but even if you are going to surplus positions, nature doesn't have a voice, so you get finance for that.
But also you need also an environment for that, an enabling environment. I think policy is important here. So policy at the policy level and also bridging the gap between policy and implementation, alignment of policy with the private sector, with startups, with the whole ecosystem.
Well, that was actually my first question was: do you relate to these topics, or is it something you don't recognize and want to add something else, or are we able to start a discussion about what could be the solutions? And then the first question is: who should be involved? Because I'm a scientist, so I always think there's a science solution for it. But of course, I know that you need to work together. So you need the policies, you need the companies, you need everyone to get this going.
A lot of these things. I'm by no means a food expert, but I see the intersectionality of adaptation to a changing climate and how that has affected us and makes us very food insecure. Because we are incredibly food dependent, and St. Martin in the Caribbean, especially for the SSS Islands and the Leeward Islands, is a major hub of food imports, not just for the island, but for Ceiba, Statia, Anguilla, and St. Bart's. So when St. Martin experiences a climate shock or disruption, or let's say COVID, because we are at the hub, the transportation hub, and the export hub, all other islands are then immediately affected. So when St. Martin doesn't get food, Ceiba doesn't get food, St. Bart's doesn't get food. And especially during COVID, they really had to think of alternatives, which was a great measure, I guess, to diversify access to food, but saw that this was a major issue. The shelves in St. Bart's, imagine St. Bart's is this luxury, high demand place, and their supermarket shelves were empty. People with that kind of wealth that have no access to food. So that's very interesting.
In the video, it was also mentioned that the largest percentage I heard is 20%.
Yes, we need also a question is the government or people talking about technical solutions for the future, or are people more like, okay, we already have the solutions, but the government needs to be integrating this to a policy. So
But one of the questions that I see, I'm sorry to interrupt you, is like there's no incentive for self-sufficient agriculture because companies have had monopolies of distribution channels of goods and services that then discourage because farming and agricultural processes to get the soil, the fertilizer, the water, it ends up being so expensive for the farmer. They're often discouraged from actually even going into and making it a sustainable business, that it's easier to then just go to the grocery store, even though you're paying for a higher cost. There's no incentive mechanism. But how do you get buy-in of like these monopoly businesses that then to not just the half of the island, but like other islands. I mean, how do you get the buy-in of that? I mean, there's no way you can move towards this agricultural self-sufficiency if you don't have political reform and stakeholder buy-in from the business sector. And
At least for the sector agriculture aspect, that's what I do in food forests. It's really great that the Ministry of Nature, after having been implementing these food forests just on as a movement, maintaining a cultural activity that comes from our heritage, the Ministry of Nature started running with it and started providing space so that schools can also participate in food forest production on their lots. So it doesn't matter what type of soil you have, eventually the soil productivity will enhance just by the nature of the system. How to get buy-in, the problem is the scale, right? So small island states have the problem of limited land resources because we don't have much space. And in the case of Aruba and St. Martin, at least I know the numbers for Aruba, but I know that the case is the same for St. Martin. We're competing with the tourism industry for land. That's one part. The next part is food that is important is not only for the local population of 120,000 people, that include locals and refugees, 20,000 refugees, but it also is catered to 1.5 million tourists that we see on average a year. So there is no way, there's no way, unless we change our hotels into vertical farms, there's no way we're going to be able to produce the food that tourists want to eat and that has actually redefined our Western diet that we have nowadays in Aruba as locals. So that is like something I liked of Cardi because they were saying we should strengthen regional cooperation to build resilience because locally, yes, we can produce food in our backyard, and we could make use of the space in elementary schools because they have quite a bit of space per school that is unused, untapped, but it will never be able to replace the needs of 1.5 billion tourists, right?
And also, we're not even, it often, like, St. Martin has cruise ports, so we have the cruise ship tourists, that there's an influx of, like, let's say 1 million people coming into our ports per day. And then finally, we have a huge marine industry with mega yachts.
2 minutes.
You know, the procurement
2
of
minutes.
food? I mean, what is the solution to this? I mean,
2 minutes.
So actually,
It is by combining traditional knowledge with technology, like I said, my system is mostly just monitor to my smartphone at all times. That's one aspect. So with that, we are promoting climate adaptation strategies because it has
It goes to the landfill.
Compost.
Yeah, but it's
Feed for animals and
feed for
animal
animals, but
husbandry.
we don't have that.
We have animal husbandry. Yeah. Valorization of waste.
Lost and waste. Because there's a lot of
Cruise ships and
waste,
yeah.
but you also have to put loss in the chain, of course.
Yeah.
That is also something not to forget.
Yeah. And also, but you can also.
What are the prerequisites for that?
This was one aspect, but also changing perception of development, right?
Political will.
Oh, I wanted to go to this one because in Aruba, you said we have to avoid overfishing.
One more minute,
Yeah.
and then we.
We have to avoid overfishing.
One more minute, and then we.
We lose 2.1 million US dollars in the illegal fisheries. And this was due to
Great discussions, very inspiring. Many discussions took place on salinity and freshwater, also discussions on circularity. I would like now to invite everybody to take their seats, but now also to invite Petra and Judith to give us like a picture on what has been discussed in your group.
Yeah. Come on, yeah, thank you very much, Wasim. Yeah, these were very inspiring discussions we had. I was very happy with all the input received. The first, can I have your attention, please? Good. I think the first thing which was mentioned is to create much more awareness between food production and food consumption, because a lot of the people who consume food are not aware about the way it is produced. So to re-establish this link between production and consumption can also reduce our food waste, I think. The second one was to introduce food forests. I think that's really a good idea because food forests are way more climate resilient than other crops. And it also improves the soils, and therefore it can also reduce water demand. And it also maximizes photosynthesis. Another thing which was mentioned is to improve the irrigation efficiency by introducing a more efficient irrigation technologies. And really study what are the most suitable crops to be grown on a certain island. We also discussed preservation methods, because sometimes there's plenty and we throw it away. So can we not preserve that for periods with less fresh food available? And of course, most SIDS are really land scarce. We thought, why is vertical farming also an option? Instead of horizontal expansion, which is not possible, maybe to have vertical expansion of your area. I would like to hand over to Judith now.
Thank you. Yeah.
Community engagement and wastewater.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's. Thank you, Petra. I think a lot of things already have been said, and I think our discussion mainly revolved around how to involve local communities, and we had a high-tech and so we have high-tech and local solutions, how to integrate those, and how to indeed involve local communities in these solutions and how to get that into the policy. And already in the first group, that the agroforestry was already set, but then we also heard about the different examples. Let me see indeed.
I think wastewater reuse was mentioned.
Yeah, so also wastewater reuse was mentioned as a possibility. Yeah, and we talked also quite a bit about aquaculture and how to let me see. Yeah, so indeed it was mentioned that aquaculture will have more importance in the future as the sea is indeed a little bit more unstable environment because of the climate change, and also to manage fisheries more efficiently. Yeah, and we also talked about, what happens, because we know that the future is changing, and we have these local solutions, and how to get this future vision that we all like to have sufficient food and have the local communities be engaged, how to go from this now, here and now, to the future. So we also talked about how about doing that, or so long-term planning. Those are some of the examples we addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Petra and Judith. Now I'll ask Fred to share some of the insights during this breakout session.
All right. Well, first of all, I like this. The discussions was very open and interesting. There is some overlap between the two groups, which is not strange because the questions were quite related and the groups were changing. So what I think came out of the first thing that was mentioned when I was talking about circularity was food waste. And there's a lot of food waste of the tourist industry, including the large ships that are arriving every now and then. The question is what to do with the food waste. And we didn't get to solutions. I'm sorry for my colleagues back home, but we have more questions than solutions, to be honest. But indeed, the food loss and waste discussion is a very good one. What was mentioned there is how to get buy-in for changing to circular agriculture, because it's all dominated by the large companies bringing in the fertilizer and other materials. So the one thing that was mentioned that was in line with what you just said, we need to work together between indigenous people and, let's say, new technologies introducing, collecting data and monitoring, so to share that with the people. And a very important one that was mentioned, it was fully dedicated to agriculture, and the first, after food waste, the second remark was, we are small islands, we have a lot of ocean, so what about fisheries? So that was also mentioned with you, and talk about protecting the fisheries. The last remark that was made was, yeah, that's nice, but overfishing is not done by the indigenous people. It's done by big trawlers coming from outside. So there we need definitely policies to regulate that. So a lot of discussion, interesting topics. I think we can add that to the strategic document that is made, but we don't have the answers yet. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Fred and Petra. And you did great outcomes, very inspiring. But actually, we would like to have some final reflections. And for this, I would like to invite Jacobina Mpufua Oduro and Thomas Westhoff. Jacobina, she's currently the regional exchange coordinator for the International Agriculture Student Associations. And she's a dedicated scholar, currently pursuing her master's in economics with a specialization in energy and resource economics at the Guam University of Science and Technology. And Thomas is the former president of the Global Agriculture Student Association. He is currently the youth advisor to the supervisory board of the Netherlands Food Partnership, and he has a double master's degree from Wageningen University and research on climate studies and international land water management. Welcome.
Thank you. This discussion was really insightful, actually, from how can the potential of food production of islands be fully exploited in a nature-positive direction, to fresh water, to salinity. I actually learned a lot. I'm actually pursuing a project in the impact of climate change on fisheries in the western region of Ghana. And whilst collecting the data, I realized what we know is not actually what's on the ground. So whilst I was watching the videos, I was like, yeah, we really need data from the right sources, else all our discussions will be in vain. We will not have the right data to actually impact or make good decisions. So I'll say one key thing I picked was we should get the right data from the right people, that's the indigenous people. So that's getting right. And also from the freshwater, when I was listening, I also remembered, I even shared here that in Ghana, we are usually mostly into mining. And so after mining, most of the mines are in the water. So the residues affect the crops being planted in Ghana. So we water these crops with residues of the water, residues in the water, and this affects the food we eat. So whilst I was here, I asked, what are some of the ways that we can actually solve this problem, and actually realize that we don't treat our waters. So we have fresh water, we've polluted it, and then we use that same water to water our crops, and it's affecting us. So from here, I have two main things I'm taking home. One, to take data from the right people so we can have better solutions. And also, I took one thing also, there is no food without fresh water. So we have to treat our water so we have better food to take in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacobina. Thomas.
Yeah, some reflections from my side. I really like what Oriana was saying. These small island development states are on the forefront. Also here at COPs, you see this is a very impacted group. Literally with sea level rise, as we heard, countries are disappearing, and in that sense, there should really be a focus on their issues, and there should really be also ambitious mitigation targets coming out of this COP, something the SIDS are very much working on. But focusing on this session, salinization, we heard fresh water, food security, tailored solutions are needed for the unique challenges, but the Achilles heel is acceleration. And we discussed how can we accelerate. We heard about the agroforestry project in Aruba. I think very nice how they are working together on schoolyards, together with also students to really create from communities also more awareness. We heard that food often is connected with the just packages products coming from outside of the islands, which is not what you want to really grasp an understanding as a society that food is water, water is food. For the rest, from Judith around salinity, we heard that 1 billion hectares of land globally are on risk of salinization, a big problem which will only be on the rise with climate change because of the higher sea levels, droughts. From Petra, we heard around fresh water that SIDS are one of the most water scarce regions in the world, and that there's also a lot of questions on how to then divide the water we have. Do we put it in more cash crops or more in our staple crops? And from Fred around food security, we heard indeed there's no food without fresh water. I think we had very nice setup here to really have these discussions. I think that's something really to be taken forward. A report was also highlighted from Wageningen University, in which they also had these workshops. I think there are some concrete accelerations, and as this COP wants to unite for action, I think it's very good to see from the Emirates Declaration that was presented, but also the global stocktake, where food and water is going in and out of the discussion, to have that really in there, and to make sure that the SIDS that are on the forefront of climate change can have a food secure and water secure future. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you. I think we came into many conclusions today. So I really want to express our deepest gratitude to each one of you for your active participation and thoughtful contributions. Big thank you for our keynote speakers, also our experts from Wageningen University and Research, who skillfully guided us through the Word Café conversation. Your expertise and leadership ensured that our discussions were both enriching and focused on actionable outcomes. Also, I would like to thank Thomas and Jacobina for their final reflections. It was really inspiring to have you here today. And before you leave, I would like to invite you to have our booklet. It summarizes our collaborations between Wageningen University and Research and our partners in the Caribbean. So before you leave, please have a booklet with you. Thank you very much.